And Rep. Perez Vega is also going to co-present the bill. So welcome to the committee. We're glad to have you here.
Gracias.
Great. And with that, you are a member of this committee, so would you like to make a motion that House File 4 be re-referred to the General?
Sí, hola, el día de hoy no tenemos intérpretes de vuelta, estamos en el comité de medios y arbitrios, entonces esto es básicamente cómo se va a pagar esta propuesta de ley para las licencias del día de hoy. Escuchamos a la representante Aisha Gómez.
Everybody on this committee has heard about this bill, I think, over many years, over decades even. We had a wonderful hearing on this bill in the Transportation Committee, and we heard from dozens of community members, business groups, agricultural groups, law enforcement, faith communities about the importance of this bill for many reasons, for economic vibrancy, for safety on our streets, but most importantly, for human dignity and recognizing the people who are living beside us in our communities and don't have access to this most basic thing that they need to provide the lives that their families need. So prior to 2003, you did not have to demonstrate lawful status, or you didn't have to demonstrate anything about your immigration status in order to access a state identification or a Class D driver's license, what's called a non-compliant license. That changed in 2003. And, since then, a couple of years later, since that time, the community has come and asked us to reinstate the situation that had always been in our state for decades before that. So, I know that we're focusing here on the fiscal implications of this bill, and there's a fiscal note that you'll find in your packet. The allocation for this comes from the vehicle services account. It's 2.3 million in the first biennium and 1.4 in the out biennium. We're expecting, you can kind of read through what the assumptions are, but sort of expecting that people will come and try to access these licenses. There will be a sort of a flood at the beginning, and then sort of a more modest allocation moving forward. I just finally want to say thank you to all of the people who are joining us here tonight, and who have been here for years and who have been here for decades. And we appreciate your work and we appreciate your persistence. And it's our intention to do what you've been asking us to do for 17 years and to sign this into law this year. And I wanted to give my co-author a chance maybe to offer a few comments also before we move on, if that's possible, Madam Chair.
Sure. Thank you, Representative Gomez. Representative Perez Vega.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Maria Isa Perez Vega. I represent District 65B, which historically is known as the first Latino community in this great state of Minnesota that has been the home of welcoming not only Latino immigrants, but all immigrants from all areas of the world that has made an impact to the state of Minnesota. I just want to let folks know that we are living in this great state of Minnesota that it has a total of 476,556 immigrants, okay? That is 8.5% of our population, according to the American Immigration Council. And, thinking about that population, about how much in taxes has been made, and that's over $4.8 billion here in the state of Minnesota. With the number of entrepreneurs of over 19,000, close to 20,000 entrepreneurs who help the economy in the state of Minnesota. And a lot of those folks are here today in this room, have been for 20 years since this has been an issue in our immigrant community. Not just our Latino community, but our African community, our Asian immigrant communities, our European immigrant communities. We are facing a human rights issue right here. Our citizens that are affected by this are facing public safety issues. It's not a matter of can we do it, because we've already done it. We had immigrants who are our colleagues who have became citizens, and prior to becoming citizens have received their driver's licenses before 2003. So I want you to just, when you're making those decisions today, when you're hearing about the numbers, think about the numbers that I gave you today and how that impacts this state of Minnesota on both sides. Gracias.
Thank you. Discussion to House File 4. Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Chair Gomez, I just want to make sure I've got some preliminary stuff online here so that I'm correct with that. My understanding is the need for this bill is so that we can allow driving privileges for people in this state that are not U.S. citizens and do not have the authority by federal government to actually work or be here in this country. Is that correct?
Representative Gomez.
Representative Petersburg, yep, this reverts, House File 4 reverts us back to pre-2003 policy when you didn't have, when people were allowed to access driving privileges by proving that they could drive, by proving that they could pass a written and behind the wheel test, knowing that that has nothing to do with immigration status, but it's a basic safety issue for those on our streets. So that's the intent of the bill.
Representative Petersburg.
Thank you. I don't think that answered the question specifically, but since 2003, prior to that 2001, there have been a lot of issues in regards to identity and concern about the security in the United States. And reason why we have real ID, driver's license and so forth is to verify a legal status here as well. And since we really understand that driver's licenses are used here in the state of Minnesota for more than just driving. Certainly, the driving privileges is something that the state can do, and we certainly can accommodate that. But because a driver's license can be used for so many other things, and there is no indication on any of these driver's licenses as presented by this bill that it's different than any other, you can understand how easy it would be for people to get confused on whether or not it's legitimate for some of the options that grant those that have driver's license and are also U.S. citizens or have U.S. authority to do so. And so we tried in other committees to try to get a different view and in different direction, even add some words that just says not for voting, because that is one of the things that driver's license can be used for is in registration. Same day registration, that has failed. And so there's a lot of concerns here, whether or not it's real or not, the perception has a lot to do with it. We're dealing with dollars that are in the fiscal note coming from U.S. citizens and Minnesota citizens and being used for this particular piece. And I think there's some concern about the safeguards that we put in place and have not put in place. You know, if it was talking about reinstating the driving privileges, that's certainly admirable and something that we can work towards. But doing it in a way in which it appears to be the same as others that have U.S. citizenship, I think is very dangerous and something that we have to really be concerned with. I'll be voting no on this bill for that reason, and because of the dollars that citizens have put up for this. But I thank you for your attempt and for what we need to do. And I think we can work on it later to try to get some of that done.
Representative Hassan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a question, but I have a comment. Thank you both to Representative Aisha Gomez, who's my sister district, and Representative Maria Isa, who's also on the other side, south side, west side,
That's
both
right.
being represented here. It's an honor for me to say that I do support this bill. As someone who is an immigrant, came here fleeing from a war-torn country, people don't get here because they are looking for some luxury life. People get here because they're running away from war, they're running away from corrupted governments, they're running away from famine, they're running away from drug warlords. They get here, and the people that we're talking about are our neighbors, our friends, our colleagues, people who live in our community, who are already here, who are already working, and are, some of them risking their life to drive their kids to the doctor's office, to school, pick up your kids from school. So we're not really asking something impossible here. What we're asking is, can we have the compassion to say that, because we have this privilege of like going to the, DMV and getting driver's license, that these immigrants also deserve that right. And 4 years ago, when this bill was in front of us, I talked about my family story. My mom, when the war happened, crossed the border between Somalia and Kenya illegally, because she wasn't thinking about legality. She wasn't thinking about anything else. She was worried about saving her 10 kids and her one grandchild. So when you have to make the, choice between saving your family and, crossing the border legally or illegally, you're gonna save your family. So I really would love for us to have the conversation of, these people are here. They're our neighbors, they're our community members, and they deserve the right to drive. It's a public safety issue. It's an economic issue. Just think about how many people will be working and paying taxes to us. So even if we don't care about the morality and humanity issue, it's about public safety. You want the person that, if God forbid you have an accident, that the person that's driving that car to have a driver's license, and B, to have an insurance. And if a person doesn't have a driver's license, they can't get insurance. So I really want us to ground ourselves in, even if we forget about humanity, to ground ourselves in public safety and economic issue. And what's good for Minnesota? What's good for Minnesota is that we give people the right to drive, so we can all be safe, and people can pick up their kids from school without worrying about being caught. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Hornstein.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I wasn't going to mention this particular story until I heard the very compelling story from my colleague, Chair Hassan. But my mother also crossed the border illegally. After surviving the Holocaust and World War II, she crossed into Austria illegally from Czechoslovakia. And so I think if you go back in all of our family histories, many of our family's histories will have that story. But thank you to Representatives Gomez and Perez Vega for bringing this bill. Chair Gomez had mentioned the hearing we had in transportation, and I just wanted members of the Ways and Means Committee to know that it was an extraordinary hearing for many reasons, but I can't remember in my over 20 years here a bill that had such broad support. How often do we have business and labor together? The faith community, law enforcement, and most importantly, the stories that we heard from so many aspiring citizens, especially youth. And so I think that there is a growing consensus around this bill across the state. And I hope everyone will join Representative Gomez on this committee and voting yes for this bill.
Thank you. Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Gomez, there you are. Representative Gomez.
You're tall.
My question is more from an IT back office perspective. So I'm not going to comment on the bill at all as to some of the things that have just been said, but I have some concerns with one of the other bills that I think is also coming forward with the motor voter, and that this bill is going to create quite potentially some back office nightmares from an IT perspective as to who can and cannot be legally enrolled to vote as a result of motor voter becoming potential law as well. Can you address that and maybe allay some of my fears? Because I think that if you're going to do a bill, you want to make sure that it doesn't cause problems down the road. And from everyone's favorite Republican IT nerd, Representative Liebling smiled. I just have questions because I don't see it going without incident. And I don't think that you want that. So can you tell me some of the steps and things that you're trying to pursue? Because I know that some of the members would like to see something on a license, but it's all, I mean, you can print it on the license. That's great. You could put it in big bold letters, whatever, but it has to happen behind the scenes in a database somewhere. And I don't know that that's been thought through. So maybe help me understand how you're going to achieve that.
Representative Gomez.
Yeah, Madam Chair and Representative Nash. So motor voter, is that automatic voter registration? Okay, thank you. I was like, I'm not on the elections committee, so I wasn't familiar with that term. So it's a good question, and it's a question that a lot of people have had. And so I have talked to the Secretary of State's office. The situation right now is that people of many different immigration statuses are able to hold Class D licenses in the state of Minnesota. If you are a recipient of deferred action for childhood arrivals, you can get a license, but you don't have the ability to vote. If you're a green card holder, you can get a license. You don't have the ability to vote. If you have temporary protected status, for example, there are a number of different immigration statuses that people can have where they do not have the right to vote, but they do have access to a Class D driver's license, a non-compliant license. It just means non-compliant with Real ID or Enhanced ID. And so I did speak to the Secretary of State's office. And as part of the, so I'm not the Democratic IT person. That's this gentleman right here, Chair Noor, who will, if he knows, he'll probably help me out if I get something wrong. But I spoke to them. The way that the data is transferred is from the sort of license records is that only people who have demonstrated citizenship, only that information is passed over for automatic registration. And so that's already, because we literally already have, I don't know, probably tens of thousands of people in Minnesota who have licenses, who go to the DMV, who don't have citizenship and don't have the right to vote. This is sort of adding more people to that group, but they're already accounted for in that policy. And I do just want to address sort of the voting issue in general. We had a pretty extensive conversation about this in the Transportation Committee, and Representative Petersburg just referred to it as, people are able to use their IDs or their licenses to do things other than driving. But we have a system in Minnesota where a driver's license is not required to vote. What is required is to establish your identity and your place of residence. Those sometimes are on the same credential, sometimes they're separate. So that's why when you look through, you'll see primary and secondary documents in House File 4, which is sort of like the same thing as the Secretary of State's. It's like you show an ID, and then you can have like a bill or, there's a number of other secondary documents that can establish your residence. But the third piece, which is very important, is the attestation that we all sign before we receive a ballot. And what that says is it attests that you are of legal voting age, that you live where you say you live, and that you are a U.S. citizen. And it is a felony to falsely attest to U.S. citizenship. And it is taken very seriously. It has hefty criminal consequences. It has permanent, lifelong immigration consequences. And so when you talk to the Secretary of State's office in Minnesota, or any of the, is it 18?
It's 18 states. 18
states that allow people to access driver's licenses regardless of their immigration status, or when you look to decades of Minnesota history before this policy was changed in 2003, you simply don't see some widespread kind of phenomenon of people trying to vote intentionally when they're not eligible to vote. Because of that, now it's like a receipt that we sign. And if you read through it, it kind of like lays it out for you. And because of those consequences, if you do falsely attest to U.S. citizenship. So I went a little bit further on the voting thing, just because I know that there are questions, and I think that I know that they're genuine. And so I've kind of like learned more about it in the last few weeks. And so just wanted to share that. Happy to take any follow-up about AVR if that didn't, or about motor voter if that didn't get to it.
Básicamente los republicanos siguen
And I know
diciendo que si
we
nos dan
have
las
a lot to get through,
licencias
and we will take
puede haber fraude
a little bit of
electoral
leeway
y que
here
le
to
tienen
go
que
into
poner una
a
marca, y
wonderful
lo que hace
backstory, which
la
is super helpful for
representante
the question at hand.
Aisha
But our
es
goal here
básicamente
is
le
to
está
really
diciendo, no,
focus on
no
the
la puede
fiscal
ver
and do
porque
that.
en
And
el
I know
pasado
that,
las teníamos
and I
y
will absolutely get to. I'm just
nunca
saying, I'm
hubo
not
un
saying this to
índice
Nash or Gomez
de
right
que
now, but
hubo
just a broad reminder
fraude
to the
electoral.
committee of why we're here as we go about hearing a bunch of bills that have been through committees where they probably had been really vetted, even though we don't all sit on them. So that's just a general reminder, not because of exactly what's happening right now. But with that, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And that was the lead in to this question, because this is the fiscal committee and we do have to appropriate money to make this happen behind the scenes. I'm sure Representative Newer would agree with me that more testing is going to be better for a launch if this becomes reality. It should come as a surprise to zero people that Minnesota doesn't exactly have the greatest track record on creating software, and that there have Representative Hornstein's laughing because he lived through it as well as I did. I'm just trying to make sure that if this becomes law, that you not only have thought about it, and it sounds like you have to some degree, but that you've also appropriated money to make sure that that happens behind the scenes. Because I think I said this, Representative Hornstein heard this a number of times, nobody forgets a bad launch in software. People usually get fired, curse words are said, new curse words are invented, and I just want to make sure that you're thinking through all those things. I have reservations based on my professional experience, and I hope that by the time this makes it into law, if it does, that you've considered that and taken care of those potentialities.
Representative Gomez.
So Representative Nash, you talked about more testing. I guess I sort of maybe if you want an answer from me, I maybe need a little clarification. Right, IT testing. I guess I don't.
So we'll take this offline so that,
Okay.
because I'm getting the stink eye from the chair.
She would never, Madam Chair.
It's like, dear God, Nash, stop with the IT. But beta testing, making sure that before it actually goes live, that you try to break it a few times and then fix it and then break it a few more times and then you roll it out to the public, because we've had far too many pieces of software here in the state of Minnesota that no one did it. They just sort of prayed over it briefly and said, well, here we go.
Or they knew it was.
So if this becomes law, I don't want that to happen, because then more bad things happen.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Nash. Let's talk more about that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I was not giving Representative Nash the stink.
So you said.
With that further discussion, Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just for the record, I just want to say that I don't think you're capable of having a stink eye, Madam Chair. And that has nothing to do with me asking for you to hear any of my bills in this committee. It's completely independent of that. Madam Chair and members, I do think it's important to highlight what we do agree on tonight. The first thing is that the United States of America is awesome, right? That we're in the best country on the planet. That we're such an awesome country that hundreds of thousands, millions of people every year want to come to the United States for hope, for opportunity, for a better life for they and their families. And that's a good thing for all of us to celebrate. There's a lot of negativity in our media, a lot of focus about what's wrong in America, but let's never lose track of the fact that America is the first, best, and original place for hope and freedom in this world. And it's an awesome country, and we agree on that. The second thing is that when it comes to immigration, make no mistake about it, that immigration is a net add to the United States of America. It really is the secret sauce that makes our country better than other ones. Across the world, entrepreneurs, risk takers, talent seekers, they come to the United States. They come to this shining city on a hill to live out their dreams. And it's a reason why we are able to consistently defeat our international competitors. And those are good things that we should be proud of. The bill today in front of us is here primarily because of a problem at the federal level. Federal immigration laws make no sense. They're broken, they're busted, and they have been for a long time. And as with a lot of things when the federal government screws something up, state and local units of government are left to pick those pieces up and to try to craft solutions to those problems. Well, the federal solutions are beyond our capabilities, members. We don't have the ability to pass laws at the federal level. But what we can do in our conversation about these laws is understand the consequences they have locally. So in the bill, the stated solution for this bill in the fiscal note, we do see that only 20% of those who are here in the country, in the state of Minnesota illegally, would even apply for these licenses. So 4/5 of the problem is going to be by the author's documents and the fiscal research is going to be ignored and left the same. Those are the assumptions that are in the fiscal note. In addition to that, whether we like it or not, no neighboring state in Minnesota allows this currently. So we are, whether we intend to or not, providing an incentive. We are providing an encouragement for people who are illegally in our country to come to the state of Minnesota. There are many ways to solve this problem. There are many concerns. I think there's a good faith effort on behalf of the author and those who support this to solve a problem, but there is in fact a better way. And I would hope that the DFL majority would choose, rather than using their legislative majorities to enact the DFL only bill, is to work collaboratively with both sides of the aisle and to Chair, I'll be voting no on this bill, but I would encourage the author and the DFL to please work with Republicans so we can have a bipartisan bill that accomplishes the stated goals of the bill without providing Minnesota to be a magnet for those who are in our country illegally. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Don't see any further discussion, so I'll come back to the bill author for final word on the bill. So Representative Gomez.
I just would say thank you again, mostly to the community. Thank you for all of your work. This is our last step before this goes to the floor. And we appreciate you all being here and appreciate everything that you've done and want you to know that you are valued members of our community.
La representante Aisha básicamente le da gracias a la
And
comunidad
that's something that
y nos
I
dice
think
que
we
este
can
es el
all
último
agree on.
paso antes de
And so,
que
thank you,
vaya
Madam
a
Chair.
voto y después de ahí sería el voto al
Vega.
Senado
Thank you, Madam
y
Chair. Quiero
después
dar
al
las gracias a la
gobernador.
comunidad que están aquí. I
Seguimos.
would like to give thanks, just echoing what
Escuche mejor a María Isa.
colleague Rep. Gomez said, to our community that is here, that has been luchando, that has been fighting for this, and for those kids, the kids that are citizens that are out there who look at this as not just an opportunity for their parents, but an opportunity for them to be able to heal the nightmares and the traumas that they have suffered because they feel fear. They feel fear for something that is just unjust. And I really hope that the members of this committee on both sides seek the justice in trying to heal that trauma for these children, these great children who are born, whether they're born in Minnesota or, yes, this great country of the United States of America and other states, that their parents have the ability to be able to get a driver's license. Gracias.
Thank you. And thank you for everybody who came for a 5:30 hearing. To be here, we don't often have a audience like this in Ways and Means, so it's nice to see the community really show up in support of the good work our bill authors and others have done over the years. So with that, Representative Gomez, would you like to renew your motion that House File 4 be re-referred to the General Register?
Yes, please, Madam Chair.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
No.
The motion prevails and House File 4 is re-referred to the General Register. Thank you. And our next bill on the agenda for today,
Y pues eso concluye nuestra audiencia del día de hoy. Pasa. Más adelante, en otra ocasión, tendremos a nuestro compañero Jonathan o a la compañera Emilia, tal vez diciéndoles un poquito más de cuáles son los siguientes pasos. Saludos a Martínez David, a Olga Paz, Héctor Zamorano, Gloria González y a todos los que estuvieron comentando el día de hoy. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros y sentimos que haya empezado algo tarde el día de hoy la audiencia, pero son demasiados propuestas de ley y nos tocó hasta esta noche. Tenía que ser un poquito más temprano, pero en fin, muchísimas gracias a los que se quedaron aquí a escucharnos y les vendremos con más actualizaciones en la próxima audiencia. Buenas noches y de vuelta gracias por acompañarnos.